Latvian and welcome. Thank you all for joining us at the grand reopening of the Latvian Museum. The program will take place in English today to accommodate all of the museum's creators, partners, and sponsors. The American Latvian Association is proud to present the only museum of its kind in the U.S., the one and only Latvian Museum, now adapted for today's audiences. First of all, thank you to Pēteris Dejevskis and Renate Gravers for putting together today's program. Pēteris Dejevskis, who along with Ann Clausen has headed the museum renovation project, will lead you through the program today. And of course, thank you also to the Latvian Lutheran Church of Washington, D.C. for providing us with the facilities to host this ceremony and reception. Today we are surrounded by longtime friends of the museum and of the late Lilita Bergs. But I also wanted to take this opportunity to share that I too am thankful for her friendship and inspired by her humble and tireless devotion to the museum's cause over the years. Thank you, Lilita, for what you put into this project, and I hope that we take the next step into the future of the museum in a way that you would have wanted. Now I'd like to invite the next speaker, Valda Greenbergs, the American Latvian Association's Director of Cultural Affairs.
It is my great honor, as the Director of the Division of Cultural Affairs of the American Latvian Association, to warmly welcome all of you here today. At the opening of the American Latvian Association Museum, we celebrate not only the reopening and rebirth of this wonderful place, but we also celebrate the life of Lilita Bergs, the heart and soul of the museum. Lilita, who was by profession an anthropologist, began her work at the Latvian Museum in the 1970s to preserve important and valuable artifacts that tell the story of the Latvian nation. One of her primary goals in this work was to create a place where the history of Latvia would not only be archived and preserved, but would serve as an important tool to educate and inform future generations of Latvians, while also sharing our story with those not of Latvian descent. As her friend Pēteris has described her, she was a force of nature who never shied away from challenges or let the doubts of others get in the way of her dedication to the work of building and curating the museum. Thanks to Lilita's tireless efforts and unwavering dedication, today we gather to enjoy a restored museum complete with updated technology and modern museum installations which meet the highest standards of modern-day museum best practices and will be sure to draw audiences of all ages and ethnic backgrounds. While Lilita was dedicated to the success and continued growth of the museum, she never expected praise or acknowledgement. Today we pay respect to Lilita, who invested much of her life to raising awareness about the history of Latvia and the plight of Latvia's people through this museum. I think I speak for every one of us here today when I say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Lilita. No sirds paldies. To commemorate Lilita's lifelong dedication to the Latvian Museum, this plaque has been created to thank Lilita and to acknowledge her many years of work for her lifelong contribution to the creation and development of the Alla Latvian Museum and to the preservation of Latvian heritage in the United States. The artwork, and I hope you have a chance to take a look at this more closely a little bit later on today, the artwork on this plaque was created by artist Guido Augusts in 1977 and is called Gaismaspils, the Palace of Light, and was sent to designer Joanne Uzawa by Lilita years ago. A few months ago, when we came together to consider designs for this plaque, we agreed that the image of the ancient Latvian fortress representing strength, tenacity, and beauty that also personifies Lilita's love for Latvia would be a fitting tribute. I would like to present an honorary diploma from PBLA, the World Federation of Free Latvians, to Lilita's nephew, Eric Gray, bestowed posthumously to Lilita in gratitude for her many years of leadership, work, and passion dedicated to the museum. Eric?
Thank you, Valda. Those are very wonderful words. For me, they were also very special because I met, and as did my wife Ann, met Lilita 45 years ago in Kansas, where we worked together. And Lilita, back then, I did not know her before then, came to me and said, you know, there's a museum being created in Washington, D.C. It's called the Latvian Museum. And I said, well, that's fascinating. It's a great story, isn't it? Yeah, let's do an exhibit together. And that's how I got sucked in 45 years ago. It was a wonderful moment because Lilith became a friend and not just a colleague. So we will remember her forever. But today, as we heard during the sermon, it's a day of joyousness. And I think that's what Lilith would want for all of us to just celebrate a new stage in the future of this museum. I will, as part of today's agenda, I will walk you through some of the major speakers. We've tried to gather some of the key people who have worked with us to produce the exhibit, the audiovisual programs that you will all witness downstairs. And to start things, I would like to just start with our honored guests who have gathered here to greet us. And first, Martin Andersons, President of the American Latvian Association, is here to say a few words. Martin.
Thank you, Peters. Honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the American Latvian Association, thank you for joining us for the reopening of the Latvian Museum. The study and preservation of Latvian history is one of the pillars upon which the American Latvian Association was founded. Latvia's history for centuries is marked by invasions and occupations that denied Latvians their freedom and the ability to fully express their unique cultural identity. The story of Latvian struggles for independence, as well as the details of our rich heritage, is of interest not only to Latvians, but to anyone who believes in the inalienable right of freedom and the value of cultural diversity. Thanks to a dedicated team of volunteers, generous donors, and supportive partners, this story can now be told to a new generation of museum visitors. New exhibits, displays, and interactive media have brought the museum into the 21st century and provide it with a platform upon which to grow. A process I hope every Latvian American and all of you will be a part of. Today, during the church service, we heard about the sacrifices of John the Baptist. In a similar vein, so many people have sacrificed and contributed their time, talents, and energy to this transformation. It would be difficult to name them all, but I'd like to call attention and express my thanks to a few of them. First and foremost, as we've already heard, our sadly departed board member Lilith Becks, who for so many years poured her heart into this project and led the team behind the renovation. She will always be in our hearts. Second, Peters Dejevskis and Ann Clausen, whose creative talents and expertise in museum exhibit design were invaluable to the renovation. And I'll pause here because I want to symbolically say that. I'd also like to thank Renate Gravers, who generously volunteered to manage the museum after Lilita's unexpected passing. Her enthusiasm for Latvian history will be obvious to anyone who visits the museum. Rena? Thank you also to Heritage Montgomery for generously sponsoring the production of the museum's rack cards and for promoting the museum locally. Today, unfortunately, we are reminded that brutal efforts to erase or rewrite a people's history via violence and intimidation continues to occur, such as with the war in Ukraine and the repression of Uyghurs in China. This makes the Latvian Museum just as, if not more relevant today than when it was founded. Thank you all for being a part of its continued success.
When the concept of the museum was envisioned by Alla back in the 70s, the focus was on preservation of traditions and folklore. But the mission today has changed. Generations have passed, and we are also looking at the story in a different way. And as we started our project, we turned to the ambassador at the time, Andris Teikmanis, to see what his point of view was. And it was so meaningful for us to have his perspective on what we should do. And he strongly advised, talk to the young generation, make them understand where we've been and hopefully where we're going. And that was a huge start. So the project really began in the Latvian Embassy here in Washington on Massachusetts Avenue. Andris Teikmanis, the Honorable Ambassador of Latvia to the United States, is here to say greetings to us. And I know that Ambassador Teikmanis is in Jerusalem today.
From Jerusalem, but I spoke with Ambassador Teikmanis actually yesterday because we are preparing gift also for the White House from the President's Palace in Latvia, so that and I told about opening. So the best regards from my predecessor. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. At the entrance of the opening of Open Air Museum in Riga, there is a sign which says, "Kas pagātni pētī, tas nākotni svētī." My translation would be, "Who studies the past, blesses the future." I am sure that this idea of past and future association can be fully applied to the Alla Museum. Since the end of 1970s of the last millennium, American Latvian Association has been involved in preservation and communication of Latvian history and culture and the history of Latvians in the United States. This probably was not direct and the most important task at that moment for Alla, but we can thank Board of Association and its members for taking up this duty and carrying it through decades. What was once a collection of artifacts and personal belongings, folk costumes, folk art, music instruments, now with a generation donation from Alla, private funds and other institutions, has become a real museum. The museum not only displays the same items which has been an integral part of collection, but also gives a concise history of our land, country, state and people. On behalf of the Embassy, I would like to thank everyone who has helped not only financially, but also with volunteering and helping to build up new exhibition. And of course, special thanks go to Ms. Lilita Bergs, who had a vision and ideas for new exhibition, and I'm sure that Ms. Bergs would be happy to see the final result. When my family was posted in the United States for the first time, Alla Museum was one of the special places we, Embassy people, were showing to our official guests this museum here in Rockville. We hope to continue this tradition and include museum in official programs of our superiors from Riga. But I very vividly remember Heritage Days of Montgomery County when our Latvians in the area had opened the same hall we are gathered today, and museum for everyone in county to see and to learn about us, Latvians, and Latvia here in Maryland. I do hope that after the couple of terrible COVID years, this tradition and event in that or another form will be brought back giving a possibility to learn about different and interesting nationalities living in Maryland. I wish to express hopes that the museum will receive blessing and also support from Rockville and Montgomery County. To conclude, Latvian saying says, "Do not hide one's light under a bushel." I would like to wish Allah and museum to find a way how to show this collection and enormous work which has been done in order to create this exhibition to everyone who is interested to see it in the United States or elsewhere in the world. The museum and all of us, all of you and us deserve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Selga. When we invent a museum or recreate a museum, the question is, who are we speaking to? Who is our audience? That's what museum professionals deal with day in and day out. And the word interpretation is used to describe the process of how to deliver the message. And I'm going to read just one short paragraph, which hopefully will serve as a kind of a guideline to you all when you go downstairs to visit the exhibits. What was the basic assumption that we were working with as we started our project? So here it goes. We all know what a foreign language interpreter does. The interpreter is a person who understands a language that someone else does not, and then translates what is being said into a common language so everyone can understand. A museum interpreter does much the same thing for an audience that may not have the background information needed to fully understand what they are seeing on their own. Interpretation in the museum context, however, is more than mere description. It is intended to help visitors connect with the deeper meanings of what they are seeing. And the important thing is, we're trying to build connections both intellectually and on an emotional level. So when you go downstairs later, that's the premise of what we attempted to do. To build an exhibit, you have to have a strong, solid academic framework from which to work. As interpreters, we're not historians, we may know history, but you really have to work with those who really have studied it and were very deeply concerned with it over an entire career. And we were extremely fortunate that Dr. Andres Plakans, currently Professor Emeritus at Iowa State University, wrote a book that gave us that foundation. And kindly, he also was willing to read every word, looked at every picture that you will see downstairs as part of the review process that took online and on the phone. So since Andres is not up to traveling these days, he recorded the following message for us. This story has even a broader meaning. It has a Baltic meaning. And I'm so happy that Carl Alto, the managing director of the Joint Baltic American National Committee, known as J-Bank, can address us today. Carl.
Labdien. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Peters. And as Peter said, I'm here on behalf of the Joint Baltic American National Committee, J-Bank. I'm also a neighbor downstairs, so I'm glad to have this opportunity to speak today. I'm very glad that this day has finally arrived. It's been a long time because of COVID. There were some delays in getting the museum ready, and of course I know all the efforts that Lilita had put into this over the years, and with Peter's help here to help finish the project. But I applaud the decision by Allah to support this, and I know from being a neighbor, from being right next door, visiting the museum often, telling a lot of people about it, hoping that folks in the future will come to visit, that it is very, very important to have it there. As other people have said, and more eloquently, that it is very important to have this story to tell others, not just Latvians, but to introduce our world, the Latvian world, the Baltic story, because it's so similar, to others in Montgomery County and to the to the Washington D.C. community as well, who aren't familiar yet with Latvia's story. So it's very important to do that. And the Matsita had mentioned Ukraine. It's important to remember Ukraine as well, because again, we share a lot. We share a similar histories and fate. To bring that, some of the not so good things that have happened in Latvia's 20th century history are also those that are shared by Ukraine. And just if I could take a sidestep for a moment, because of the work that we do, I can't not take the opportunity to mention that our colleague and Allah's board member, Zintar Zilna, who's here today in the back, he has some postcards for people to sign if you'd like to do that to help support Latvia and the Baltic cause. So Zintar will be there to make those available. But back to the main story. Again, I wanted to thank Peters, Renata for all your help and including us in this discussion today. I did want to say Lilita was a wonderful neighbor, both here next door to the museum where our office is, but also across the parking lot, where she was a friend, an avid gardener, and working in the bunker, as we call it. Lilita was the one, especially over the last couple of years, whom I saw most frequently. She would come in, she'd spend, she had odd hours, late nights. I could hear her fussing and complaining about things, but also she shared her experiences over the decades and her story and the importance of the museum. So that was very important to hear. I'm glad I was a front row witness to that. We would have occasional conversations about this business. And one of the conversations led to a wonderful cooperation that we had in developing an exhibit, which we were able to organize during the 2018 centennial, and which was also featured in the lobby of the State Department, or more precisely, as it is now known, the National Museum of American Diplomacy. When they first opened up, and we were one of the first ethnic exhibits to be displayed there. We later had a traveling exhibit that went to the Baltic countries and was displayed in the national libraries of Latvia and Estonia, in the Estonian parliament. It's now in Chicago with the Lithuanians, so everybody's making use of it, even though this happened 4 years ago. But with Lilita, who prepared the display cases for that, there was a little bit of our history. There was Baltic history, Latvian history. Again, we shared the same story. And to have it in the State Department, in the lobby, where diplomats, there were hundreds every day going back and forth, got a glimpse at least of that story. So there's a sort of a new generation now that is display cases and different artifacts that are there, but it's so important to have that here. Last thing I want to mention is that in the former museum there was a guest book, and I hope the guest book gets brought out, because when I did have guests there, I would always point out the first signature at the top of the guest book was that of Toomas Ilves, who was the president of Estonia. There's an Estonian school that meets here also every couple of weeks. They just got back together a few months ago, so if you can bring the Ilves guest book out again and have others sign that, that's wonderful, because it's there for everybody's use and education. So thank you.
Thank you, Carl. We'll get that guest book going really soon. The process of getting an exhibit together involves a team. It's almost like theater, where you have lighting designers and actors and performers and people who are dealing with the script. Without a script, you don't have an exhibit, at least in these times. My wife, Ann Clausen, who's been mentioned, it was amazing. We've been together over 50 years, and she still was willing to volunteer to help with development of the content for this exhibit. So I'm really thankful to her. Once your script is done, you really need a designer because you have to visualize this experience in three-dimensional space. And I'm happy to introduce you to Joanne Yuzawa, sitting over there, who is our exhibit designer and designed the right card you see above, and has stood with us for many, many years, including the timeline, which Lily developed with Joanne at least 6, 7 years ago. What I'd like to do now a few short introductions from our team. And the next one will be a wonderful young talent, Kristaps Ločmelis, who grew up in Riga in the 90s and came to the US around 2016 to study at Hunter College in form of media studies and video production. And he sends us a message, if we could hear that now. One aspect of the museum is space. As you have, those of you who know the space, it's small, 800 square feet. That's a very small area to tell 1,000 years of history, which is what our objective was. And of course, the 20th century story is so enormous, and there really wasn't physical space to tell it, but thanks to contemporary technology and media, we were able to do this using film, videography, and production of short videos. None of the videos you'll see downstairs are longer than 5, 6 minutes. And we were very fortunate that we had some extraordinary talent to turn to produce these videos. Mara Pelez, who some of you know because she was a mastermind of the ZSM SWAC in Minneapolis, and also an extraordinary director and producer of film. Those of you who have seen Valiant know what I'm talking about. I would like to invite Mara to the podium to say a few words, and then after that, we'll ask Lila Roaming to join us at the front here.
Labdien, good afternoon. Sirsnīgs paldies jums par klātbūtni. A sincere thank you to everyone here today, and especially to the American Latvian Association for making this new exhibition possible. Going back to those who were on the board when it was first just an idea in 2017. Being invited to create works with this wonderful team was an honor, and it is an honor to be here today. Thank you, Peter and Anne, for being the curatorial, organizational, and creative force behind what we see today, together with Lilita Bergs. I was fortunate to have the opportunity to walk through this space last spring with Lilith, as the walls and show were just starting to come together. I was here as a guest for iesvētības, or confirmation, and she asked if I wanted to see the space. We found some time to sneak downstairs after the meal. Of course, with Lilita having the keys, we weren't quite sneaking around. After having worked with her and everyone on the team via email and phone calls over the last couple of years, it was amazing to see things coming together. What was once a series of paper and digital scripts, floor plans, and layouts was now coming to life on these walls. And it was especially meaningful to hear Lilita's personal observations and impressions. She is and will be missed. A heartfelt liels paldies also to Lila for taking your personal time to record not one, not two, but 4 scripts in one morning recording session. While I've known Lila for a few years, this was the first time I had the honor of working together with her, and it was truly an amazing experience. The studio sound engineer and composer, Reed Kruger, and I have worked together for well over 10 years. On American client projects as well as Latvian feature films, including the Gadazers film and Valiant. And I can report that Reed's Latvian comprehension and pronunciation is getting better with each project. Reed and I compared notes after these shorts were done, and it was clear. Lila took these scripts and readings to the next level. We were truly blown away. Some of you may know that Lila and I are both from the Twin Cities. However, we didn't know each other growing up. Before I knew Lila, I knew her father, Dr. Jan Strobic. Besides being very active in the Latvian community in Minnesota, and for many years here with Alla, Dr. Robic was an accomplished world-renowned chemist with numerous patents. He developed cold box casting, which had an impact on industry worldwide and in our daily lives. Today, this accounts for 90% of iron casting, from structural components in construction to automotive engine blocks. Like many here, with intense and rewarding professional lives, Dr. Robic always found time for Latvians in the Latvian community. He was on the Alla board for many, many years, and back home in Minnesota, he would approach us at our local Latvian events and would engage each of us personally. Are you a member of Alla? And with card and pen in hand, he was ready to get us to sign up if we were not. He was almost always doing outreach. But our story goes back even further, back to Latvia. And so it was especially meaningful for me to create these shorts with Lila, particularly the displaced person's history. Jan Srobin's father, also Jan Srobin, and my grandfather, Karl Slepin, were colleagues as agronomists, or agronome. I think it's a little awkward for me to say that in English. As the war continued, both having worked in the Latvian government, they knew it was time to leave. They were scheduled to leave on what was to be one of the last ships from Liepāja. Only my grandparents, having slept poorly the last night before leaving, had not arrived to board the ship. Lila's father, a young Jan Srobin, was sent to run back across the city of Liepāja to see where my family was, waking them up from having overslept and almost missed the boat, quite literally. My family's fate could have been very, very different. So as I stand here today with you, having created these short films which embody our shared histories, I am especially grateful. Unfortunately, the history on the walls of this exhibition is not all in our past. With the war in Ukraine and the military drills along the Latvian border, the need for NATO support continues. In the spirit of the mission of Alla, through the works in the museum and their outreach beyond these walls, as Karl Altva also mentioned, it is crucial to continue to be active in our communities, in our letter writing, and in staying informed. Please enjoy the exhibit. Thank you again. Paldies un vislabāk.
Indeed, it was a true honor to have Lila Robbins be part of our team. This was an extraordinary thing because having a professional voice is essential to delivering stories the way we were dreaming that they would. And I really have to introduce Lila, but you do know her from her extraordinary work on film. And in fact, she'll be leaving early tonight because there's a production session tomorrow in Toronto. So it is a true honor. Lila Robbins, please.
Amada, thank you for those beautiful words about my father. Appreciate that. And my dad, I do recognize that anecdote about him coming up to people and saying, "Are you an Alla?" Because my father had a very bad sense of personal space. And I think you probably all experienced it at some point or other. Sometimes I wake in the morning when I would visit and he'd come up to me and say, "So, blah, 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 blah," and I'd say, "Dad, I just need to get a cup of coffee first." Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, it is my absolute pleasure to be here with you on this very auspicious occasion, the opening of the Latvian Museum. We cannot underestimate the value of this endeavor. The ability to have all of this wonderful history in one place and in English to educate further generations of Latvian Americans and Americans. We'll be forever indebted to Pēters Dostoyevskis and Clausen, and little Tibetics. It is such a wonderful accomplishment. And I understand it's natural for you to have introduced the ambassador incorrectly because you've gone through 3 ambassadors during the day. Letting them off the hook a little bit. Okay. And to illustrate what this museum means to me personally, I was on a trip to Latvia with my father and my mother and my sister, Baiba. I have 3 sisters, Baiba, Dinah, and Zyga. And Baiba was the one who came on this trip with us, and we were tagging along with an American Latvian volleyball team that was going to go out into the countryside and play some rural Latvian volleyball teams. And there were some extra chairs on the bus, so they offered them to people who might want to be on the bus tour and see other parts of Latvia. And I had recently gotten a video camera. Now this was before all of our phones could do everything, so it was a little mini video camera, little small tapes. And I decided that I needed to document my parents' history, and I thought that interviewing them in Latvia would be a really beautiful backdrop. And I was so happy to have this tape of my parents talking about their lives and how they escaped and their experiences in the DP camps. But as I look back at it, I realized that it was all in Latvian. And that my sister Dinah's children and her grandchildren would not be able to understand it. Not a word of it, years from now. And that thought just haunted me. It would keep me up at night, and I thought, oh my God, now I have to find someone who can write subtitles, and we have to redo this whole movie, and I don't know how to edit, and it just became this sort of nightmare thought. And so I'm so content, and so contented to know that there is a place that they were able to come and visit and to learn about their ancestors' struggles and their victories. And I rewatched the documentary videos just the other day, and I found myself terribly moved by the images and the content. I feel the stories are told honestly, succinctly, and precisely. And it's very important that it be succinctly because of, you know, how attention spans are these days. And when I was a child, the stories were passed down orally, and perhaps a few pictures, you know, that survived the move to America. And so one relied on one's imagination. But to see actual archival footage makes all the more visceral and palpable. Just to see the camps, the boats, the people, the children, the protests, the fighting, the tearing down of Soviet statues, and the raising of Latvian flags. How enterprising all of those people were in the camps, continuing education and cultural events and theater and music, and how all 3 Baltic countries band together to bring this change. It was all very emotional, as you can see. It made me so proud to be Latvian and to see the Latvian energy and spirit. Mara Pelecis and Kristaps Ločmelis did an amazing job editing what I imagine was just countless hours of film. Mara was also the one to invite me to do the voiceovers. So we had the scripts, amazingly written by Anne Clausen, and we had the recording studio, and we had the engineer, Reed Kruger, of Waterbury Sound, and he also composed the music. And we had the will. And I've never worked so fast in a recording studio in my entire life. We were just blam, blam, blam. And in these situations, time is money, and we were on our game. And I think we got it done. I've done many voiceovers in my professional life, some industrials and some documentaries, and many commercials. You may recognize my voice from Degree Antiperspirant for a higher degree of protection. Or Van Heusen, the shirt that irons itself. Or my personal favorite, White Diamonds by Elizabeth Taylor. Needless to say, It was wonderful to work on a project with such gravitas and importance. I'm thrilled and immensely proud of the final result, and I hope you will enjoy it as well. Dia Seti Latvi. God bless you.
So where do I go from here? That was wonderful, thank you. One of the things we dealt with is how to build a story so that it would reach out to our target audience. That's the most difficult question that a museum project really involves. Where are you heading with the story? And while we were thinking about it, we felt like, let's talk to our teachers. They probably know better than we do. And so we were very fortunate that 3 wonderful teachers from the Latvian schools of Washington, Dinah Block, Lila Medna from the New Jersey Latvian School, and Sylvia Mezgals from the Philadelphia School, all were willing to spend hours going over our scripts in person, line by line, image by image, to tell us, oh, this will not work, or this is going too far, or you missed this point. So it will be wonderful to hear from Dinah Block as a representative for all our teachers who, well, Sylvia's not here, but Andra, I forgot, Andra, where are you? Thank you so much for being part of that team as well from the Philadelphia School, Andra Svarbu. She will speak to us a little bit about her take on what it was like to do this project.
Labdien. There is no greater learning tool than something that sparks the imagination or the interest of a student and offers them an authentic experience, or as close to an authentic experience as you can offer that student. And that evening back in November of 2021, maybe it was, I showed up not knowing what to expect. I thought, will I be able to help them? Won't I? And we went through Anne's entire script. We talked a lot about tense and how do you talk to a 10-year-old? What is a 10-year-old going to respond to, and what person should it be written in? And I took great pleasure in the fact that the interest was geared towards children, because what does our history mean if we don't pass that on in its truth and in its authenticity to the next generation? So I was very happy to add just a tiny bit of help, and I thank you for that learning tool that you had offered our DC Latvian school, and we toured it on November 20th. That was very brave of you to let us in there. And we thank you for it. Our students want to go back and they want to spend more time there. But I think that the work was tremendous. It was a feat, and I can't express to you enough how fantastic it is that it was geared to the young and to pass that history on. And in closing, I have to say that the other thing that was passed on to us was that we were also sort of roommates of Lilitas, and the teachers who understood what she was doing there and the fact that she used one of our classrooms often. What she passed on to us was the Latvian work ethic. And that in itself, if our teachers can take that along with them, that is greatly valued. Paldies.
Thank you, Diana. Well, what about the kids? We have a young man who's part of our team. We had 3 youngsters, Michael Gebhardt and his mom, and Marianne Gebhardt have a wonderful son, Edward, who is here today, and he will comment on what he went through reviewing our project.
Good Good afternoon. I'm Eddie, and I'm honored to have played a small part in the redesign of this wonderful museum. My sisters and I previewed early versions of the exhibits with our uncle Peter Stajewskis, or Uncle P, and our Ann Clausen, and we gave them feedback on what might resonate best with our generation to tell the Latvian story. I am a second-generation American who is 1/4 Latvian, and what I most appreciate about this museum is how it's designed for all members of the Latvian community and even non-Latvians to learn more about this inspiring nation and its heritage. Here is this tiny country that's been fought over for centuries by Germans, Russians, Denmark, and Sweden, and still others. Yet, as my grandmother and my other Latvian school teachers taught us, the Latvians have fought tirelessly to keep their culture alive and even managed to obtain whatever benefits they could from their oppressors, such as taking from the Germans a written form for their beloved Latvian language. To me, this museum communicates the endurance and adaptability of the Latvian people. I'm proud of coming from such a strong heritage and hope that other young people will also be inspired by the messages presented here. Thank you, and paldies.
Thanks, Eddie. Great words, thanks. And there's always reason to express appreciation because there's so many people who have done so much for us. And we do kindly talk about that.
Well, when Lily and Peter and I first started this project, I never would have imagined that it would take 5 years, that it would take place partly in the face of a devastating global epidemic, and most of all, that we would come to the finish line and Lily would not be with us. And that really breaks my heart. However, I know she would be very excited and proud of what the museum has become, and I only wish that she was here with us to enjoy the day, and she probably would be fussing and complaining too, as you mentioned. So our first step in creating the new exhibit was to turn for inspiration, as Peter mentioned, to Latvia's former ambassador to the U.S. His name was Andris Tekmanis. That was the former one. We asked him for his thoughts on the role the museum ought to play in our world, and he strongly urged us to target young people with our message saying our young people, our young Latvian Americans do not know our history well. And we're very grateful to the ambassador for his counsel and for setting us on that path. We ourselves did not have a particularly strong background in Latvian history, so as you saw, we turned to an authoritative source. Professor Andres Plakan's book is Latvia, A Short History. It's a wonderful book if anyone is interested in learning more about that history. I really would recommend the book. So the framework of that book became the framework of the exhibit, and we relied very heavily on him in all ways. And as Peter mentioned, he was kind enough to look through every word and look at the videos in order to help us make sure that they were accurate. And then we had a series of phone calls with him, and he helped us refine and polish up the final version and straighten things up. And so I think what we ended up with was Latvia, a really, really, really short history. And Andre, I hope we did your book justice. Our entire team, including Joanne Uzawa, who designed the exhibit, Bill May, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but he was the one who built the cases and installed the graphics. And of course, our wonderful video directors, Mara and Krista. And certainly the incomparable Lila Lovins. The whole team, we are so grateful to the American Latvian Association, whose invaluable support was not only financial, but we were really buoyed up by the board's enthusiasm and encouragement. And Lily, in what became her last months, was especially thrilled by the regard that you all showed to the project. So members of the board, Marisa, and many others, it has been a real privilege to create this exhibit, and we thank you for the honor of telling your incredible story. So, our Latvian school teachers are the warriors on the front lines of the effort to preserve Latvian heritage here in this country. And these women helped us enormously in shaping the narrative so it would best resonate with young folks. And they decided adjustments to the vocabulary, clarified concepts for us, really urged us to incorporate more Latvian words into the exhibit, which we were happy to do. And so we're very grateful to Lila Mednick, who's here today. Yes, please. She teaches at the New Jersey School. And her irreplaceable mom, Maya Mednick. Sylvia Mejka, who couldn't be here today because she's working on the teardus for the Philadelphia Church. She's the head of the Philadelphia Church. Agnes Vogler, who's here today, teaches at and your own Dinah Block. It's amazing how much your manuscript has improved after scrutiny by a high school English teacher. We thank you all for your invaluable support. The help of one group of consultants was really irreplaceable, and that was our 3 young students from Philadelphia Latvian School, Edward Gebhardt, who you've already met, and his sisters Matilda and Elizabeth. They happen to be related to me, so they really couldn't escape. These 3 young consultants spent many, many hours reviewing the content of the exhibit. They identified the elements that, this isn't working, and the ones that they liked, and how to make others better. And they were excellent editors, all 3 of them. And Eddie, I can point to like 3 different places on the panels that had to be revised thanks to your perceptive questions. So please accept our deep appreciation, and please convey that thanks to your sisters. Wendy Abelweiss is an internationally renowned museum education specialist and a dear friend. I came to Wendy with a big, messy pile of stories I wanted to tell, but I didn't know how to tell them. And she came to the rescue with a concept that related in the interactive element of the exhibit called the choice cards. We wanted a way to invite visitors into the lives of the earlier generations of Latvians, and emphasizing and helping them to imagine the challenges and the choices of those earlier people that they might have faced in their time. So I thanks to Wendy, who couldn't be here today, for her guidance, which is so much appreciated. And I also thank my teacher, daughter Mara, for helping to make the choice cards age appropriate, and my daughter Dinah, who did the final edit. Thank you, babies. Lily always spoke so highly of the many volunteers who helped her over the years with a wide range of tasks related to the museum. And I am sorry that she has not left me with a complete list of the names of all these steadfast helpers. So I'm unable to thank everyone individually by name. I do know that Mrs. Selga was a frequent helper, as was Lily's friend Rosma Kadinya, and Giannis and Stephanie Beatles were always available to help. And we thank each of you, named and unnamed, and I'm sorry I don't know all of your names, for your service. Thank you today for Andres Lucis for volunteering to handle the audio-visual elements of our event, and to our team of greeters who are going to be helping us navigate through the building, and to the women of the congregation who, as I have heard, or many ovens have been put to work in the last few days to provide some wonderful baked treats for our pleasure. Finally, I cannot emphasize enough how grateful Peter and I are to Renat Grave, without whom we simply would not be here today, celebrating this moment. Renat really took us under her wing, and she stepped up in every possible way, including volunteering, I'm very happy to say, to become the museum's visitor service coordinator in time going forward. She's been with us every moment since Lily's passing, organizing, researching, sending out invitations, bugging contractors to get things done, and even organizing the hospitality of our guests today. We're extremely grateful, Renata. Lils Pontius. In closing, I'd like to thank all of you for being with us here today to launch the museum to the public and to remember and honor Lily's many decades of service to the preservation of Latvian heritage and culture here in America. I would like to leave you with just one small piece of advice. Please make plans to visit the exhibit with the elders of your family. Do that while there's still time. The things you'll learn and stories you'll hear will be so much more valuable than any of the words that you're going to read on the wall. You will treasure that experience. So thank you, and let me turn the program over to Renat now, who will get us organized regarding what's happening next.
Dear friends, thank you to all of you. Thank you to the people who made this museum alive and vibrant, as you will see. And thank you to the spectators, those of you who have come to see this wonderful work. And I certainly hope that in the days to come, you will let your friends, your relatives know that the museum is here. We are willing and able to show it at any time. Just give us 8 minutes, because that's how far I live from here, for me to get here and open the museum to you. It has been such a pleasure to work with Peders, who is unbelievable. He is, I will say, the soul of that museum, together with Anne. Lily was the heart, and she, as everyone has said, will be very sorely missed, but I know she's looking down and saying, okay guys, get on with the show. So this is how we will get on with this show. We have divided all of you into groups. The first group, the important group, is a larger one, and if you see that, if you look at your programs, there's a little number in the corner on the right-hand side. We are not tracking you. There will be no ads coming up, floating up to you. But that number is that if you are in group number 1, as soon as I finish speaking, you will go downstairs and go through the museum. We have 9 greeters here who will show you and help you on your way downstairs. This is not the first and only time you can be here, because if you were to really look at the museum, we'd be here probably until tomorrow, okay? So this is a quick tour through, just to get an idea how wonderfully it was done, and then please come back, because the American Latvian Association was gracious enough to allow us to have a reception. And when you come back, there will be real goodies here. The rest of us will already be getting those goodies before you get back. So, you know, don't linger too long downstairs. I would also like to say that I was very fortunate in whatever I needed to do. I asked young people to help today, and whomever I asked, I did not have anyone turn me down. And I would like those 9 people to please come up here now. These are my greeters. I want you to look at them because they are our future. Also, some of them are young. Well, anyone who's younger than I am is young today. So please come up here, all of you. And I want you to know that these people have also agreed to help in the future with showing the museum and with anything that needs to be done with the museum here in Washington. So I would like to just thank each one. When I see them, all right? Now, would group number 1 please go downstairs and use the elevator, and our readers will go and show you the way.
Paldies, Renāte. And as the next group comes, they will be announced.
We will announce group number 2, group number 3. Just keep looking at the little numbers.
roast me way out of it. If anyone would like to take... Nice to meet you. I knew your father.
Oh, you did?
Back in the day, yeah, and I've been up... If he were Latvian in the U.S., as opposed to being Estonian in Sweden.
Oh, I see.
And it's self-guided, no explanations.
I'm going to carry your purse so you can, yeah, do you mind? That'd be great. Thank you.
Tieši tāpēc, ka viņa bija sieviete, bija tik skaista, viņa bija 17.
Yes. The point of the whole day, and it wasn't going to happen.
Varbūt tāda ir.
Tad šis arī bērniem ļoti patīk, īpaši kā, kurš tur. Galvas sēgas kāds lietas, īsti tie nav sen.
This school's in Hurley.